Hello and welcome to my presentation of Afghanistan and Tesla moving their operation to Afghanistan. So a few quick facts about Afghanistan. There's approximately 36 million people who live there, and the country covers an area of 252,071 square miles. They have two official languages, Dari, sometimes referred to as Afghan Persian, and Pashto. Dari is the predominantly more spoken language. It's about 60-40. They have Islam as an official religion. Islam has two different sects, Sunni and Shia, and Sunni represent about 80% of the Muslims in Afghanistan. And of the 36 million people who live there, there's about 26% of them who is urbanized. Some about the economy in Afghanistan. So since the wars at the turn of the century, the economy it was devastated. But since then, it has experienced a lot of growth, but it's still extremely volatile. So for comparison, in 2001, at the height of all the wars, their GDP was only about 2.4 billion, whereas 15 years later, in 2016, it's all the way up to 19.4 billion. Their economy is still heavily dependent on outside military and international assistance. And because they're so dependent on these things, the Afghan government really doesn't have much of an influence on their monetary policy. And that's also why their government has little influence on the government itself, and it's still so volatile. The main exports of the country include raisins, grapes, and opium cultivation. So now a bit about the political overview of Afghanistan. They're divided into three branches, very similar to America. They have an executive, legislative, and judicial branch. So for the executive branch, they have one president and two vice presidents. They're all elected by popular vote, and all three of them serve 5-year terms. The president elects ministers, so similar to how the American president has cabinet members. And each of these ministers must be approved by what's called the People's Council, which I'll get to in a later slide. Now, the legislative branch. It is bicameral legislature, and it's referred to as the National Assembly. It's divided into an upper and lower house, so two different houses. The lower house is referred to as the People's Assembly, so there's that People's Assembly I was talking about. It contains 250 members, and these members are directly elected and they serve 5-year terms. Now, the other house, the upper house, which is referred to as the House of Elders, it contains 102 members, and there's 3 different ways to get in. So it's split up into thirds. So 34 are appointed by each of the 34 provinces to 4-year terms. Another 34 are appointed by district councils for 3-year terms. And the last 34 are appointed by the president, and they also serve 5-year terms alongside him and his vice presidents. And to the judicial branch. So their primary court, called the Supreme Court, similar to America, it consists of 9 justices. And they are appointed by the president with approval by the People's Council, just like his ministers are. Now, instead of serving life terms, as they do in America, they only serve 10-year terms, so it is a finite thing. And their main responsibilities include managing the personnel budgets and policy decisions of the entire national, regional, and local court system. Below the Supreme Court, there is the High and Appeals Court, which I'll go into more detail on those in a later slide. But these are for cases where it's not really necessary to escalate it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And then additionally, all 3 of these courts, there is the National Security Court, which handles cases of terrorism and other threats to national security, which obviously is a big thing in Afghanistan. Now, more on the Primary and Appeals Court. So there are 3 judges who hear each case. In order to resolve cases, the courts abide by the Afghan Constitution. They must hear the cases out and seek to the Constitution for conciliation of the situation. And where there is no clear way to handle a case, or there's no clear outcome or past case like it, they'll seek out 2 specific articles, Article 120 and 131 of the Constitution, where these articles go into explanation of how to deal with ambiguous cases, sort of like a walkthrough. The education in Afghanistan. So the Afghanistan educational system includes quite a few different schools: primary, secondary, higher, vocational, teacher, and religious schools. As required by law, just like it is in America, all children are required to complete 9 years of compulsory education. So that's your K through 9 kind of thing. The government provides free education all the way through a bachelor's degree, not just through 12th grade. After a bachelor's degree, though, if you do pursue a master's or anything else, tuition and fees are applied. To keep up with the recent surge in demand for education, many institutions are struggling to keep up with it. So there's been a recent surge in schools or institutions that are private or for fee or for profit. So those who can afford things like that, they will go there. Their academic years from March to November. And a quick little fun fact, the grading scale, it's a little different than in America. So the typical in America, A and B, is the same there. But C is where you see the biggest difference. So it's going to be 55% through 79%. And D, just a small margin, 50 to 54%. And then the whole entire bottom half is F. Now on to their information and communication infrastructure. So the current infrastructure. There are currently 6 active telecom service providers and 44 ISPs, or internet service providers. The 4 mobile operators and state-owned Afghan Telecom form the majority of the infrastructure. After the war at the turn of the century, so back in 2001-ish, there was literally no telecom infrastructure. So since then, there has been just immense growth in this department. And the industry is actually now one of the largest revenue generators for the country. Some future plans for this area. So one of their projects is the National Microwave Network. Its goal is to establish 4,428 telecom base stations. And what these are is they serve as a backbone for mobile services and wireless connectivity. The MCIT ATRA is using the Telecommunications Development Fund to construct an additional 76 telecom base stations, and these funds are awarded to the mobile operators on a competitive basis. So they sort of have to compete to get this money. One other project, the National Fiber Optic, it's a $130 million project, and its goal is set to lay 4,810 kilometers of fiber optic cables. This will connect 23 different provincial capitals and several major cities, making it, more connectivity, better speeds, and things like that. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit towards Tesla and sort of what this company is about and how they're doing. So a little bit about their mission statement. So this is a company, it's headquartered in the U.S., and their goal is they strive to create products that utilize renewable energy such as electric vehicles and solar panels and things of that nature. Predominantly, this is driven by their goal to lessen the dependence of the world on fossil fuels, and they want to shift people more towards renewable resources rather than using oil and things like that. Their current operation, so all of their vehicles and products are manufactured in California. They have several store locations, mostly in the U.S., but they also have international locations. None in Afghanistan, of course, but the closest to Afghanistan is not far. You can find them in the United Arab Emirates and Jordan. A little bit into the company's performance. So their top-selling product is the Model S vehicle, which is one of their electric vehicles. In 2017, they sold approximately 27,000 of these vehicles. Put it in comparison, it's quite a bit smaller than any of the other U.S. domestic car manufacturers, but for a company that is quite different than just your typical gasoline-driven vehicle, it is still pretty good. A bit about their financials. So they have a revenue of $11.8 billion in 2017, with a cash balance of $3.4 billion entering 2018. And they have projections for revenue growth in 2018 that far exceed the revenue in 2017. So it's still a little early to know if that projection is going to be true or not, but that is what they are projecting. So their car's revenue in quarter 4 of 2017 totaled $2.7 million. And energy product revenue in quarter 4 of 2017 was 298,000. So the two major parts that make up this company, the car and energy products. Now, a little bit about localizing their website. So something they're going to need to do is they're going to, of course, change the language of the website. At Afghanistan, as I mentioned earlier, it has the 2 official languages, and both need to be used because they're both spoken widespread throughout the country. As I mentioned, Dari is slightly more spoken than Pashto. It's about 60-40. So I'm thinking that at the when they enter the site, there should be a quick little selection from the user. Would you rather have it in Dari or Pashto? And that way that the user can see it in their native tongue. Some miscellaneous localization items. So all the measurements that Tesla's provide, which they do provide a lot, given the nature of their industry, it's all going to have to be converted to the metric system, which won't be too much of a challenge since that's the most commonly used measuring system in the world. And since the telecommunications infrastructure is fairly weak, they are going to have to most likely tone down some of the graphics and other high demanding features on their site that they probably currently have in their US site. I don't think that the infrastructure that's in Afghanistan is going to make the site quick and responsive like they'd like it to, and it'll just make users get bogged down and etc. For search engine optimization, Afghanistan, just like America, they predominantly uses Google far and above. It's over 95% of the searches in Afghanistan are done using Google, which is very similar to the US, so I don't think they're going to have to change much in order to be on that first page of related searches to their company, given that it's both Google. Alright guys, so that's the end of my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.